And we are here with Big Shep at Big Shep 79 on Twitter, the host of the About the Cards podcast, which streams live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and can also be found on iTunes and Stitcher. Shep, did you get anything card related for Christmas?
Not card related, but my sister's boyfriend, I think he's trying to work his way into the family, gave me an autographed George Brett bat.
Oh.
And I don't have one. I damn near cried. I'm manly enough to tell you that when he gave it to me, and I was blown away. I was blown away. I'm just looking at it right now, and I still can't believe it's in my house. It's amazing.
Wow, he's really trying to slide in there. What did he get? Did the other family members get good gifts too, as well?
Not this good. Not this good. Makeup and a leaf blower. Nothing as awesome as a George Brett autograph bat.
Wow,
I'm pretty pumped.
I think we should officially, he's got my vote to welcome into the family. So, but just from that alone.
That's what I told him. I said, well, if it doesn't work out, then we'll kick my sister out and we'll just adopt you then. So
that might work. Shep, you've been hosting the About the Cards podcast. You're over 78 episodes deep into this. What's it like to host a podcast like that every week?
It's a little crazy. Real quick, we started it because we were inspired by two shows. One was Cardboard Connection Radio from a long time ago, which died and went away. And then you and your brother have always been doing these awesome shows, and we kind of wanted to merge the two together, where we talk about new stuff that comes out and then other, shit that's happening to people in the hobby that they need to be aware of and not be, a mouthpiece for, brands and companies and stuff like that. It's crazy. I mean, doing it live, we get the interaction with the fan, with, they'll show the listeners, and we get to have, it's off the cuff, there's no editing to it. What we say is, what's coming out of our mouth right there. So I love it. It adds for some fun. You're just kind of hanging out there, and, we flub up sometimes, and it's not always, sometimes technology doesn't work, but it's a lot of fun to do.
Here's a question. You talk about these other podcasts. Should podcast? There's a lot of them now. I feel like there's like 10 or 15 different podcasts maybe now about sports cards. Do you think sports card podcasts should be obligated to talk about controversial topics? I know. I think I saw the other day an former NFL football player, Evan Mathis, was accused of card trimming on the Blowout Cards forum. Do you think sports card podcasts should be obligated to talk about controversial topics like that?
I believe if you're a good one, you're going to bring it up and you're going to make people aware that might not be aware of it. Because some collectors aren't online with collecting in certain forums. Some might not be in Blowout forums. Some might not be on Twitter. Some are only maybe on Facebook. And so it's getting as much information out there as possible. Let people know. We were off this week, and the Evan Mathis thing is going to actually come up next week on our show. One of the guys on the show with me just sold Evan Mathis one of his own cards, and we were going to talk about that. And then the trimming thing came up, and we're like, okay, this just all ties in together. But yeah, they need to. I mean, because you need to. You got to tell people to me, that you have to tell people what's going on. If you have knowledge, you need to share with other people so they can become as knowledgeable. So,
what are your thoughts on all the card trimming stuff? We're ending 2020 here. To me, that was probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest sports card stories of the year. What do you think about all that stuff? It's still kind of ongoing. Again, more people are being discovered, more trimmers are being accused. What do you think about all that stuff?
Well, it goes back to just all the grading stuff. Like, I don't like grading cards. I don't think people should honestly do it, due to the fact that all of these things have come out recently, right? And how prevalent it's been in the hobby for how many years, and how do you know what card's what? And to me, it's bullshit. I mean, these companies continue to do it. PSA keeps, saying, hey, we're having record numbers. BGS is backloaded for God knows how long. It's going to take you 6 months to get one card back. And, I think that it's all, none of it's standardized. It's all the personal opinion of that grader. I know they have certain rules they need to fall in, but one grader can see it one way, another can see it another way. And when it comes to the end of the day, it's an opinion of what the card looks like. So to me, besides encapsulating it so that it doesn't, disintegrate or anything like that, you can easily do that with a one-touch. All these awesome protections that are offered by other companies like Ultra Pro, you can do that yourself and seal it up that way. To me, it's ridiculous that they're continuing to offer these services, and we've talked about it a lot, but that's without us basically not supporting them, that's the only way they're going to change their behavior. But people keep sending in mass orders, and they can't get enough of these graded cards, and that's really, it's really a shame. And I even got in an argument with your buddy Brian Gray, and I actually talked to him on the phone, and I'm just like, this is and he's like, well, these people have all these things and they've been doing it for years, and it's like, well, yeah, these companies need to be stopped, but until they stop getting money for it, they're not going to stop.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy situation, and sports cards are so hot right now that like you said, even all these developments hasn't slowed down PSA or Beckett to anybody's knowledge as of yet. So we'll see on into the future. Speaking of podcasts, do you listen? I know you listen to my podcast because you direct messaged me to I was calling for requests for people to get onto the show, and so you direct message me. Do you listen? What other sports card podcasts do you listen to?
I listen to yours and your brother's, obviously. The guys down at Mojo. I've been listening to them forever, and I loved when you guys all did the show together. That was awesome. Those are the main ones I listen to. Every once in a while, I'll tune into Beckett. Eric's a really nice guy. We've had our differences in the past, and I think we've kind of cleared those up. But he's more just kind of, letting you know from Beckett's side what's going on, and that's fine because that's the company podcast. John Newman has a sports card collector one that's really good that I catch, and Drew with Let Me Get the Potograph. He's got a really good show. And one of the other ones I kind of like sometimes, Dr. Beckett has one, and they're about 15 minutes. And most of the ones I've listened to are just stories about his adventures in collecting. So he's like this. It's like a story one, historical one. So that's cool.
Nice.
And then I have a new one that's coming out. My buddy Mike Summers doing one about like being self-sufficient in the hobby and making money and taking that money to buy your cards and not using any of your own capital to collect. Sure. And he's just a couple episodes in, and it's good. He's gonna do, and they're gonna be about 15 or 20 minutes, I believe. Basically, an audio version of the blogs he's been putting out.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So I listened to the interview you did on the Beckett podcast. This was many months ago, and I think you even got awarded Super Collector of the Month by them for your George Brett collection. Can you talk about your collection, your George Brett collection, how that all got started, and you got awarded Super Collector, so you must have a shit ton of cards of him?
Yeah, I do. I started collecting in '87 and living in Kansas. George Brett was the one and only. Bo was just coming into it, but I always loved George, and so every time you get a George Brett out of a pack, it went away in a box or a binder, and kept them all through these years. When I got back in 2012, it's like, hey, let's go get a copy of at least every one of the cards that came out with his name and picture on it, and I've been doing that the last almost 7 or 8 years now, and it's going pretty well. Most of the playing days I've been covered, and so now it's getting into the years where he wasn't playing, and just trying to keep them all in order, and knowing which ones I have and don't have has been fun. And I've bindered up most of the tops ones throughout the years, and working on the other brands as we go.
How do you know which ones you have and which ones you don't have?
A lot of the playing days ones I can eyeball, just from fondling the cards all the years. Definitely fun a lot of George Brett, but no, I have a Excel spreadsheet that I kind of just I pulled together from all the checklists available out, and then as new releases come, I'll update those. I'm not as interested in today's cards as I am as the ones from 75 through 94. But so I'm trying to work through the mid, and then I'm now working through the mid to the late 90s when I wasn't collecting and after he retired. But there's so many, and the play dates ones are the most important to me. So I kind of keep a list and have it on my phone, and whenever I see something or I see a George Brett, like I'll be at a card show and a guy will have 10-cent cards and there's all these players, and I'll just buy all of the George Bretts that he has. And if I have duplicates, no big deal. A few monster shoe boxes full of George Bretts from all different years. So
How many total cards do you have? Do you think of just George Brett? Yeah.
Probably about 20,000 or so, I'd say.
Damn.
Yeah, just looking at the little monster shoebox storages that I have, and then the binders.
Have they got, sports cards have gotten hot here in the last 5-6 years here. Have George Brett cards gotten more expensive in the last 5 or 6 years?
No, I really haven't noticed that as much. The autographs and relics and stuff have, and I have a few of each, but I'm not a huge autograph and relic guy as far as cards. I have a handful, but his base cards not necessarily. Some of the shorter printed stuff and low numbered stuff does go pretty well. And he does have. It's funny to find. I found so many collectors that have popped up in the recent years on Twitter that are all of a sudden they're George Brett fans, or they have been, but they've been secret or whatever. And so I'm finding I'm the guys I'm battling with to buy some of these cards.
Right.
But yeah, no, he's got a pretty consistent price base, but it hasn't exploded lately. So, which is nice. So I'd like to keep it that way.
How much are you spend? Do you have an idea how much you spend per month just on George Brett cards?
On Brett, maybe probably $75 a month, maybe. Okay. A lot of the spending right now is I've kind of gone into selling and having an eBay store and doing card shows, and so it's been buying stuff to supply those. But I would say I'm $50 to $75. I would say on Brett a month, finding stuff, and it could go like a month or two without, and then just buy a big piece. Buy a Brett rookie that's in really good shape and add it to the ones I already have.
You mentioned kind of setting up at local card shows. There's one coming up. I think it's on January 4th up by you in Sacramento there. What's that like? How many shows have you done from the selling side and kind of set up? And what's that all like?
Yeah, I've done 2 so far, and I've done really well. The local show here is really good. You have people set up with box. They're selling just sealed wax, and then you have guys selling junk wax, and then you have guys selling vintage cards, then the hot young, then you have the guys selling all the prospects and rookies and stuff, but nobody had any quarter boxes. And so what I did was like, well, I have all this inventory that's mine that I don't really care about that much. And I've saved what I wanted. And so I went through and organized it all, set up quarter boxes and dollar boxes of stuff, and a box like, autograph and relic cards. And, I made big signs. I priced them to sell. The more you buy, the more you're going to save and to kind of do bulk purchases. And I've done really well in 2 shows. Paid for the table within the first 25 minutes of each show.
Wow.
And then everything else after that's been profit. And it's fun because I get to talk to the other dealers and just see kind of what they're doing. I get to talk to collectors and find out what they're looking for. And I have the 2 times I've been, I had one guy each time spend 3 hours going through my boxes, and he's probably spent $300 with me overall in the 2 times, just picking out quarter cards and loading them up. And the other thing I did is I was like, what do I like to see when I go as a buyer? I wanted it to be organized, so I made sure all the teams were organized with labels, and I had brown lunch sacks, so if people bought a bunch of cards, I could put them in there for them. I made it real easy for them to shop my table. Pricing was clear, and every time somebody walks up, I say, "Hey, how's it going? Let me know what you're looking for. If you have questions, holler." Because there's a lot of times you walk up to these local shows and the dealer just sitting there and doesn't say anything, and you're like, "Okay." So I love it though. It's so much fun, and I can't wait to do the one on the 4th and see what happens.
I think I might. That's only about an hour and 20 minutes from me, so I might, if the weather's good, I might come up to that. So where are you getting all? Are these just cards in your collection that you're kind of organizing, going through, and putting for sale, or are you buying cards specifically to sell at the show?
Yeah, a little of both. It started out as stuff from my collection, and then I started uh, finding stuff on OfferUp, and just kind of browsing that once or twice a week just to see. And I'd go and buy a big truckload of cards for $50 and go through and find stuff. And a lot of it's junk wax that ends up getting tossed or damaged cards, but I've always made at least my money back on what I picked up. And then the other thing too is I have a local card shop here that every once in a while when I'm in, somebody brings in that stuff, and they'll buy it in bulk and keep what they want, and then they always hook me up with extra stuff. Or people open cases of Bowman last year, and he just wanted the autographs and the some of the chrome cards and left everything else, and they're like, well, we don't want to store this, and so they gave it to me, and then I turn around and dig through it and spend the time to do that, which is fine. And I do it after work when I just need to have a beer and chill out for a little bit, and go through and pull out the stuff and sell the rest as bulk and put the other good stuff in the boxes. And so I've gotten probably 25% of my inventory has been free, which has been awesome. And
Wow.
I'll never turn anybody down if they say, hey, here's a bunch of cards, you can have them. I'll go through them and see what I can do with them.
What was the decision to start setting up at shows? Like what prompted you to start doing that? Was it to thin out your own kind of collection and some of the stuff you had, or did you just feel like doing it? Like why did you want to do it?
Well, your brother had a podcast earlier this year talking about, like, do make 2019 your best year, and it really got me thinking. And another collector, Ken Kinsley, we both ended up kind of, and he lives out in Texas. We ended up on the same wavelength. It's like we have all this stuff at our house, and so I wanted to, like, really pare down what I had and get very focused on what I was going to collect and keep for me and what I wanted out of my collection, and the rest of it could all go away. So I started selling on eBay. I set up a store. I got a business license. I got a reseller license. All of that stuff got hooked up with a distributor, and started doing that and getting boxes from them when I can, without spending millions of dollars, and then doing supplies and things like that, selling it all online. And then turning around and going, hey, I could set up at these card shows and start selling all the stuff that's in these monster boxes in my closet that I don't want, that other people could value, and I can sell them cheap and not care. If I sell a second year weight box for 15 cents, I don't care because I already have one. So this other guy can have it for 15 cents. Now I have 15 cents to go do something else with. And I've done pretty well on both, and trying to take the money I've made, reinvest it into getting more inventory to sell, but also to buying stuff for my personal collection that I'm going to keep, and getting on that, getting almost to the point where it's completely self-sufficient and I'm not having to support it with any money I'm making from my day-to-day job.
Right. Yeah, and it sounds like you've got a pretty good handle on things. You're only spending 75 a month on George Brett cards. I mean, there are people who probably are spending $75 every half hour on the hot card or the hot product du jour
Yep.
in the sports card world. Do you have any goals, whether it be for setting up a card show? And my brother, I think make 2019 your best year ever. So what about 2020? What would make the best year ever for you for 2020? Have you thought about that? Do you have any goals, collecting wise or card wise, or for your podcast or anything?
Yeah, I'd like to see, mainly right now it'd be the podcast, just to get a little bit bigger than where we are. We have a consistent, listening and viewing audience, but to have some more. We get about 20 or so people watching live, and I would like to see that grow. We're trying to do that by not only being on YouTube, but streaming on Facebook and also on Periscope. So I'd like to see that go up. That'd be awesome for me, and have other people kind of recognize what we're doing, which would be cool. And then just for collecting, it's really to get my George Brett thing down to perfect science, where I know exactly where everything is and have it perfectly organized. But I never think that's ever going to be complete. But it's always that goal at the end of the day, is to have it all so I can flip through it and look at it and enjoy it. That would be it. So, and then the last thing would be is just to get to the point where, I'm completely self-sufficient. And I'm not, using any, I'm just using all of my profits to collect. And that's a pretty close reality. So I'm excited about that.
Do you get any pressure, speaking about kind of paring down your collection to organize it, is that internal just from your own self, or does your wife get on you that, hey, we got 2 kids now, we need to get a little more organized? Like, who does that pressure kind of come from?
It's really for me. I mean, my wife's amazing. When our son came, she wanted to take my card room and make that his nursery in his bedroom. And she's like, "You can move to the big giant guest room we have." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so that right there said she supported me, fully. And um, it's to the point where it's like, hey, I just want to keep the stuff in the house that I really cherish and I really enjoy, and let somebody else enjoy the other stuff that I have, and make more room for things that I want.
What about so we got you set, it looks like, for 2020. What about these card companies? You spend a lot of time on your podcast, talking about the new sets that come out each week, and so on and so forth. What do you think, just broadly, what are you looking for? Any advice for these card companies as we
Yeah,
look to 2020?
yeah, I'd like to see less tops on demand things. I think that, or have them do less releases if they're going to do this on demand stuff, because what happens is there's things that pop up out of nowhere that they're selling, or like they have the throwback Thursdays, and that set, but it's like the same 10 or 20 guys all every week, in a different design. And it's like, okay, well, that to me after a while gets boring. And it's just like, I just feel like they're just slapping something together because they can make a quick print run, make some fast cash on it, that stuff. From Panini, I would just like to see flipping a fucking checklist. I want to see checklists. Like, how hard is it when you have a base product and you don't have a checklist out until a week or two after the product's release? I don't get that. That's all I want from them. At this point, let's just start simple. From Leaf and Brian Gray, I want to see him explode more so we can have more fun with him on the internet, because it's amazing. And then he can go back and delete all of his tweets, because that's what he does. But hey, that's fun to do every once in a while. And for him to get an original idea besides doing repack, because that's his best product, is buying someone else's and selling it again. In Upper Deck, I would, I don't collect a lot of hockey, but their hockey cards are cool. And I think they have some really good people working there. I would love to see it someday them able to do a different sport, and to broaden their horizon a little bit. So, but and I know they give a lot of stuff away to fans, and that's pretty cool. So, but
Speaking
yeah, just some simple things.
just a simple list. Speaking of Upper Deck and them jumping into other sports, always like to ask people this when I have. What do you think about all the major sports are locked up with an exclusive card maker? What do you think? What do you think about that? Is that good in some scenarios? Is it bad all the way around? If you were in control of these leagues, what would you do?
If I was like if I was like some master of the universe, right? I would allow Tops to say, hey, listen, we have to, see, all the companies had to make, I think their number is around 35, give or take, for all the companies and the leagues they work with, the number of releases they need to put out every year. For Tops to go, hey, listen, Panini, we're going to give you 10 of our 35, and we're going to make 5 basketball products and 5 football products, and you can make 10 licensed baseball products. And then Upper Deck to go to Panini and say, hey, you did a really good job with making some hockey cards. How about we'll give you 5 and you let us make 5 basketball? And then so forth. So they could kind of trade them around, and they're still the main producer of those cards. But wouldn't it be great to have Topps Chrome football back?
Sure.
That would be awesome to see, or, I think, just and bring back some of the old like what Panini was, some of the stuff, the hiring stuff they were doing with hockey when they had the license, was pretty cool. See Upper Deck baseball cards again, because at one point, that's all you wanted was, God, when I was a kid, like all I wanted was Upper Deck baseball because it was the new shiny toy and it looked great, and they for a long time they were the standard, and it's just great to see what they could do with them, and but just have them be the ability to trade a few of them around. Like, hey, we have to produce so many. Like, can't we sublease some of these releases to a different company? And I think they all hate each other enough not to ever do it. So they're just too. I don't know. There's probably too many lawyers involved, and then too many egos involved with dudes making baseball cards and football cards that they can never work it out. So,
did you go to the National this last year?
Yeah, it was my first time. Went to the National. Was there Wednesday through Saturday.
What did you think of the whole experience?
It's interesting. It takes a little time to realize what the hell's going on and where everything is, and after that, it's a really big. It feels like just an enormous card show. It was funny because every time we'd walk by PWCC's booth, they had like armed security guards.
That's right.
And people were yelling like all kinds of shit at them, and all the time, like people, and it was empty. There was hardly anybody there, and people were just saying all kinds of names to them. That was one of my favorite things. The other thing was just running into people I'd met on Twitter, and been doing that for like a decade, and finally physically shaking their hand or saying hello was probably the best part of it. I do the podcast with Stephen Loeffler, and he lives in Texas, and never met him before. So I physically got to meet him, and we had we did an Airbnb, and we had like 6 or 7 people staying at this big ass house.
Nice. And
everybody's a collector, and that was super cool because after we got back from the show, every night we were showing off what we got. We were opening cards, doing trades, drinking beers, and having a good time. So that was probably the best part of it. The one thing is that I bought too much and my suitcases were pretty expensive to bring back. But hey, I was thinking this might be the only time I get to go.
So no thoughts on Atlantic City, the beautiful city of Atlantic City for 2020?
Well, one of the guys we were staying with lives in Philly, and he goes, I don't even know if I'm going to go to that show. And Philly and Atlantic City are close.
Yeah,
and he's like, I could just drive home every night. He goes, man, it's sketchy. One of the guys was saying, hey, last time I was there, I was getting a burger, and I walk out of the burger place, and there's dudes just dealing drugs right in front like they were selling Girl Scout cookies. Right. And he's like, yeah, he goes, he's like, man, and this is I'm 6'3", like 300 pounds, and this guy's about the same size, and he goes, I was scared.
It's not, like, yeah. It's not for the faint of heart down there. I can't remember when it was. Was it 2016 or I can't remember which year it was in.
It was the last few years. Yeah. I loved hearing Dan Anderson's stories from Mojo about being there and how much fun that they had. So.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Stay away.
There was one night where somebody that's gonna remain nameless, not Doug or Dan, that was puking out of a cab and stuff. So that was just a great night in Atlantic City. The cabs are capped there. That's the thing is the cab rides are capped at like $15 or something. So you can, you don't actually need Uber. So that's why we were in a cab and we were just There was one night I remember where a lot of drinking, a lot of people hung over the next day at the show. I remember that it was like impacting business because dealers weren't at their tables, people weren't up to snuff because they were at these casinos getting faded, and a lot of activity out there in Atlantic City. Certainly not a place I would recommend going. So
yeah.
So, Shep, shout out your podcast that you do. How do people find it? Where can they listen?
Yeah. So we're live like you said, we're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific. We're on YouTube, Out About the Cards, Facebook, and Periscope as well. You can listen to it anywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, anything. I think now that has a podcast has picked it up, which is pretty awesome. I just kind of put it out there and. It ends up on spots I didn't even know it was, which was cool. You can follow us on Twitter at About the Cards and hit us up there with any ideas. And we basically build our show on listener feedback and from Twitter and things that are hot and going on, that week. So.
Well, fuck yeah, dude! Thanks a lot for coming on the Sports
Card
I
appreciate it.
Radio podcast, and we'll get you next time.
All right, man. Thank you.
For sure, buddy.